Hey everyone, welcome to a new video coming to you from my sofa. It is very cold outside, so I thought I'm just going to get cozy and record from my sofa today. So a little bit of a different video for you today, which is actually in alignment with World Encephalitis Day, which is coming up on Sunday the 22nd of February. Now, I posted a reel on my Instagram story, not on my Instagram story, on my actual Instagram and my Instagram story just this morning, talking about a collaboration which I have done with Encephalitis International, which is a charity, an organisation specifically to raise awareness for encephalitis. And if you've never heard of encephalitis before, it is an inflammation of the brain, which is sometimes fatal. It's usually caused by either a virus, so like a viral infection, or some sort of issue with your autoimmune system. Now, I suffered from encephalitis back in 2013, and it was really bad. Really, really, really bad. I almost died. Thankfully, I didn't. But it was a really, really horrific time for my family, those people around me more than for me myself. Like, whenever I talk about it, yes, it was horrific for me in terms of what came after, like in terms of the recovery and all the things that I had to do at that point. But actually going through it at the time, I was totally unaware. So for me, it was no way near as bad as it was for those people around me who were watching. So I'm doing this video just to kind of explain a little bit more about my story, what happened, and how it's led me to where I am today. Because, you know, if you're new here and you don't know anything about me or what I do now, I actually now am a transformational mindset coach and a wellness mentor. And I literally coach people on creating the desired reality that they want. And my mindset work, I didn't realize this at the time, and I'll talk about this a little bit in a bit. But my mindset work on myself actually truly began when I was recovering from encephalitis. And it's just mad to look back to think that such a kind of awful, horrific, traumatic time stemmed me into living my purpose and doing what I'm doing now. And I just hope that this video acts as inspiration, you know, whether it's just to one person who will watch this and just kind of think, wow, like, if you can do that, I can do that too, because you are literally capable of doing anything that you want to do. So let's take it back to 2013, and I'm just going to tell you my version of events. You know, I've had this conversation with friends, with family members, and my version of events does not always match up to what their version of events were, because my memory is a little bit all over the place because of, obviously, from having it. Whether my memory is actually affected to this day from encephalitis, I don't know. I don't know whether my memory has always just been a little bit dodge. I think it might have been, but I don't know. But obviously when you're going through something traumatic, the memories are not always crystal clear. So I'm just going to tell you kind of what I remember from my point of view. And you'll get a pretty good gist of what went down. So taking it back to summer 2013. Now, at this time, I had been working in a nightclub, literally living my best life. I want to just say I had, in my opinion, like the best job in the world at that time. So at this time, I was 24, I think I was. Yeah, 24 or 25. And I was working at one of the like top nightclubs in London. It was called Aura. It was in Mayfair. If you know London well, Piccadilly, Mayfair. It was on the corner of St. James's Street, underneath the Caviar House. Like, it was a really kind of sought after venue. And I managed to land myself that job pretty much straight after uni, where I was the PR and marketing manager for the club. And I just had the best time. I did a lot of partying. Part of my job role was to get people into the club. So I would work Monday to Friday from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. in the office, which was basically in the club. So we would, those of us who were in the kind of office management team, we would go and work in the club with our laptops, which looking back wasn't very healthy, being underground. Like, if you know nightclubs in London, most of them are underground, so no natural light. Like, it was just wasn't a very healthy environment to be spending every day. But at the time, I had no complaints. Like, I absolutely loved it. So I would do that Monday to Friday, and then I would say 5 nights a week minimum I would go out partying at the club, because we were open. The only night we weren't open was a Monday night. So Tuesday, and even then I think that they would sometimes do private events, which I would sometimes have to be at. So Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, I was out partying, literally living my best life, doing things I probably shouldn't have been doing, but nothing that I regret, because everything has led me to this place where I am today. And I honestly mean it when I say that I had the best job, in my opinion, in the world at the time. All of my friends would come to the club, my family would come to the club. We'd host loads of family functions there. Like, we just had the best time. It was a really, really, really great time. And then, so I started working there, like I said, pretty much straight out of uni. And it was the summer, it was July. So July 2013. And I remember the week leading up to this all happening. And at the time, I lived with my best friend Hannah, and we had a really cute little flat in Putney, which we shared the two of us together. And I just remember that week prior to all of this drama happening, I remember there was one night, like at the beginning of the week, where I woke up in the night and I felt really, really unwell, and I could not stop being sick. And I remember calling my dad. It must have been in the middle of the night, like maybe like 4 o'clock in the morning or something. And I was like, I'm really not well. Like, I think I need to go to the hospital. So I remember going to the hospital. That this is all a bit blurry. Like, I don't remember this very, very clearly at all. I remember going to the hospital and then being sent away and being told that I had like a gastric virus, which was explaining why I was being so sick. So that was all happening at the beginning of the week. And then I remember taking a couple of days off work, like the Tuesday and the Wednesday, or whenever it was. Then that weekend, I remember there being a couple of events going on at the club, which I didn't want to miss. And I was actually starting to feel a little bit better. So I think I'd been on antibiotics for the week. And then on the Friday night, I went to the club, and I remember not drinking, but I went and I had a good time. And then on Saturday night, I can't remember. This is where it gets a bit blurry. It was either the Saturday or the Sunday. I either went to the club again on the Saturday, or I didn't. And on the Saturday was when I went to a family barbecue, or the family barbecue was on the Sunday. I can't remember. So let's just assume the family barbecue was on the Sunday. And it was at our close family friend's house, who are like, they are family to us. We spend all our Christmases together, like basically second family, part of the fam. And I just remember going to this barbecue. It was summer and it was hot. And I just remember sitting outside and just not feeling right. And I remember a couple of people saying to me, like, are you okay? Like, you don't look quite right. And I just remember thinking, like, no, I don't feel quite right, but I think I'm just tired. Like, I'm overcoming this gastric virus, whatever it is that I've had last week. I just didn't really think much of it. I just felt a bit shit, basically. So we spent the day at the barbecue. I then went home, and this is where it gets interesting. Like, I'm not sure if you're watching this, I'm not sure what your beliefs are in terms of spirituality and all of that. But this is where I am with my beliefs. I am certain that something bigger was looking out for me at this point. So normally I would go back to my flat. There was no reason for me to not go back to my flat that night. But what happened was I went back to my mum and dad's, who live close to the where we went for the barbecue. And my dad was meant to be dropping me back, or I was meant to be driving. No, I was meant to be driving back to my flat later that evening. And I remember this really clearly because Hannah, my flatmate at the time, was going to be cooking dinner for us. And I remember she had texted me during the day asking me to pick up like a couple of bits. Like I remember she said, can you grab some ketchup? Can you grab like a couple of bits? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll grab them on my way home. So we got back from the barbecue and I was so exhausted. And I just remember saying to my parents, I'm just going to go and have a nap before I go home, or I'm just going to go and lay down before I go back to the flat, which again was not like me. I'm not someone that just goes and naps. Like, I'm not a napper, but I was so exhausted that I knew that I had to go and just rest. And that is the last thing that I remember until I woke up in the intensive care unit 2 weeks later. So from what I know and from what I've been told, I went up to go to sleep, have a nap or whatever, and I just didn't wake up basically. And my dad, this is again, divine intervention is what I like to call it, but you know, you may have your opinions on this. My dad randomly woke up in the middle of the night, and it was like 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and he thought, I'm just going to go check on Natalie, which he never normally would do. There was no reason to do that normally. And like, yes, we knew that I wasn't feeling well the day before, but like nobody thought by any means that it was anything as drastic as what it was about to be. And he came and checked on me, and I was totally unconscious. I had blood dripping out of my mouth from where I'd bitten my tongue so hard, and I'd basically had a seizure in my sleep. My dad literally thought I was dead. He was like, what the hell's going on? Obviously panicked. Like they couldn't wake me up. My dad then called an ambulance. I feel like my brother was around at some point as well, and my brother went to the hospital in the ambulance with me as well, but I can't quite remember if he met my dad there at the hospital or whatever, but I feel like my brother was around somewhere. Anyway, so they took me to the hospital, and cut a long story short, it took a really long time for them to figure out what was wrong with me. And I'm so grateful that they came across this doctor, and I'm so grateful for the NHS for this as well. You know, I know the NHS gets a lot of stick here in the UK for various reasons, but the NHS literally saved my life in this situation, which I'll forever be grateful for. And we were fortunate enough to come across a doctor called Dr. Ali Al-Mamar, who was a brain specialist. And eventually, I don't think he was the first doctor that was dealing with me, but not long after he kind of came into the picture, he diagnosed me with encephalitis. And apparently my case was like a really, really rare case. And fun facts, just to bring a bit of fun into this traumatic story, my case was so rare that it was actually sent to Oxford University, either whilst I was still in hospital or after, for them to try and figure out exactly kind of what was going on in my brain and what was happening. So yeah, basically I was diagnosed with encephalitis, and I was in hospital for about 2 weeks, I think it was in total. And I was in a coma for the majority of that time, an induced coma, because every time I was awake, I was having a seizure, like a really bad seizure. And I remember one of my brothers saying to me, like after I kind of came around and I was okay, I remember him saying to me, the only way I can describe what that was like, because he'd witnessed me having a seizure, he was like, it was literally like a scene from The Exorcist. And if you've seen The Exorcist, you'll know how extreme and traumatic that must have been to watch. And I just remember thinking, Jesus, like, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot for someone to have to witness. So I was coming in and out of a coma for a couple of weeks, and eventually I came round and I was okay. There was a period of time where they thought I only had a 15% chance of survival. And I only found that out through one of my good friends, Hitesh, who told me a while after I came out of hospital and recovery. And I was like, wow. Obviously, I don't think my parents wanted to tell me that at the time. But yeah, it was pretty bad. So came out of the coma, and I actually remember, I have a really vivid memory of me opening my eyes and just seeing my dad sitting there. And the first thing I said to him, which apparently was what, and my brother actually said this as well, like, it's really random, but like whenever me and my brothers or me and my dad greet each other, we always say bonjour. Like, my dad's half Lebanese and he often speaks French as well. But I don't know, we just always say bonjour. Anyway, when I woke up, the first thing I said was bonjour. And my dad and my brother were like, that's how we knew you were going to be okay, because like your personality, like you were still there. But I remember that really clearly. Like, I remember opening my eyes and seeing my dad there. And then I remember being transferred from the intensive care unit into just like another ward. And I just remember being surrounded by like just loads of people who seemed really unwell. And I remember finding it quite challenging and quite hard to be around, and thinking like, because I knew that I wasn't okay, but I felt that I was okay. And that's really challenging. Like, when you feel a certain way, but your body is behaving in a different way. Now, at this point, I just want to add as well, so from the encephalitis and from me having so many seizures, I just want to say as well, every seizure that I had was the equivalent, this is what the doctor said to me, he said it was the equivalent of running 3 marathons. One seizure was the equivalent of running 3 marathons. And that's the effect that it had on my body physically in terms of stress and exhaustion. So you can imagine how like fucked my body was, basically. Excuse my swearing, but I was just absolutely done, basically. And where I'd had the seizure, and like I mentioned at the start, I'd bitten the side of my tongue so deep. And I can't remember, I'm almost certain that the seizure it was the activity on the right side of my brain, which then affected the left side of my body. So the left side of my body felt extremely weak. Like, my whole body felt weak, but specifically the left side of my body. And I remember that really clearly. Like, I remember like even like lifting my arm up was like a real effort. And yeah, basically my mind and my body, my brain, everything had been really drastically affected from all of these seizures. And I was in the hospital. I remember like when I was in this other ward, like I needed assistance to just like get up. I needed assistance to walk to the toilet. But I was so determined to like get it done and to just do it myself. And I remember once, like, one of the nurses, I remember like saying to me, like, if you need anything, like if you need to go to the toilet, make sure you ring the button. And I remember once I just kind of was like, no, I'm going to do this on my own. And I remember getting up and going to the toilet, and like one of the nurses walked in as I was like plodding along, and I was actually like, I was fine, obviously moving a little bit slowly. And I remember her being like, you need to make sure you call me. And I was like, I'm fine. Like, I'm actually fine. Another thing about me, I'm a Leo, and I like to think I'm quite a typical Leo in many senses. I'm very stubborn. I'm very determined. And if I want to get something done, I will get it done. Whatever, however, whatever, whenever, I will get it done. So yeah, I was in that other hospital ward for, I don't even remember how long. It must have been another week or so, if that. And I remember my dad would come and like sit with me, and he'd bring like brain exercises that I had to do, because my brain was like, it was just on a different planet. I had to relearn how to talk properly. I had to relearn how to write. I had to relearn what things meant. Like, I had really forgotten a lot of stuff. And it was a lot of short-term memory stuff that I'd forgotten. My long-term memory, like, I was remembering like some really in-depth long-term stuff from like childhood, but it was the more like shorter term experiences and stuff that had been happening in the lead up to having the encephalitis that I couldn't remember. But I remember really struggling with like word association things. And there was a period of time where like I would want to say, okay, I would want to say like the washing machine, I would come out with the dishwasher. Or I'd want to say a clock, but I'd come out with watch. So like things which kind of looked the same and did the same thing, but I wasn't quite getting it right. So like really close, but not quite right. Um, and I just remember like doing all these like word exercises and stuff that my dad was saying. And at the time, my mum was also going through. She had a problem. I think it was with her knee or something. So she was at home recovering from something going on with her own body. I was in hospital recovering from this, like my poor dad, like back and forth like a doctor. um yeah, so it was just like a really, really crazy time. Anyway, so after I was in hospital, I then had to go to a rehab center to relearn a load of things which we take for granted every single day, such as exercising, going to the gym, doing a food shop. I had to practice like walking to the supermarket. And it was so interesting. Like, I remember this so well. I remember going to the supermarket, and I had to write a list of the things which I wanted to get. And they would set me exercises every day. And one of the exercises, which they would then observe in order to kind of be like, well, you know, you're getting better or you're not, kind of thing. I had to make a breakfast, and I decided to cook the most complicated breakfast ever. And I was like, I'm going to make a full fry up. And they were like, are you sure? I was like, yeah. So I had to go to the supermarket, and I'd written my list of like all the stuff in the supermarket. So like eggs, toast, bacon, baked beans, like whatever else it was, orange juice. And I remember getting to the supermarket and just not even knowing where to even begin to look for these things that I needed. That's how much my brain wasn't functioning. And I remember like I had someone come with me, obviously, and I remember her saying like, okay, so let's start with the eggs. What aisle would they be in? And then like bit by bit, I was like, okay, they'd be over here. And then I'd get to the aisle, and then I'd get confused again. And she was like, okay, so you can either look for them like visually, or you can look at the labels. Like, she was giving me like all the different ways that you could look for the item, which like we just don't even think about on a day-to-day basis. Like, it's stuff that you would teach little tiny children, you know, and you just take these things for granted because we just are used to them being part of our programming. And it's not until something happens where you're like, oh my god, like you have to relearn everything. Anyway, so I remember doing all of that, and I did my cooking and I did all of that, and it was all fine. Anyway, I remember just being in this rehab center, which, by the way, was probably one of the best facilities. I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to experience. It was called Ascot Rehab Center, I think it was called. And it's very interesting because I was told that I would be in there for a minimum of 2 to 3 months. And I remember hearing that, and I just remember thinking, there is no way in hell I'm staying in here for 2 to 3 months. I remember thinking, and this is where the mindset work comes into it, I remember thinking, I am going to do whatever it takes to get me out of here as soon as possible. And I was in there for no more than, I think it was 2.5 weeks. It might have even been less. And everyone was like, what? Like, how has this even happened? And I just had such determination to get the hell out of there. And like I said at the start of this video, I wasn't even aware that I was actually working on my mind at the time to be like, I'm going to change the outcome of this. Like, there's no way I'm going to let that happen. But now when I look back, and I remember a few years later when I look back, I was like, wow, that really shows the power of your mind. When you're so determined and so certain that you want something to happen, your mind and your body can do some pretty insane things. And I just remember so clearly that, like, I was going to get out of there, and I did. But I was looked after so well in that rehab centre, and trust me, it didn't stop there. Like, although I left a lot earlier than anticipated, I still had to continue recovering from home. So after that, I wasn't able to go back to my flat just yet because it wasn't safe for me to be unsupervised, basically. Just because I still needed a lot of assistance with everything. I needed a lot of help with everything. I was unable to drive as well. That was a big factor, actually. You know, if you're somebody who is used to driving, it's your freedom. And, you know, when you're 24, 25 years old, losing the ability to have that freedom was really challenging. So I ended up going and staying with my mum and dad. And I had some like home recovery sessions as well. I can't really remember what that looked like or what that involved. But I remember definitely having some home recovery sessions going on. And I had to continue seeing a physio in order to get my body to, you know, function properly again. Had to continue having, continue working on my speech, on my memory. Like I said, my short-term memory was like, it was actually really funny. Like, it was actually really funny. Me and my friends had some very, very funny conversations about nights out, about boys at the time. And they'd be like, do you remember this? Do you remember that? And I'd be like, no. And then they would like have to explain the whole situation. And it was like we were all reliving the experience, because for me, it was basically the first time hearing it. And I was like, what? Like, we just had such laughs over my memory loss. And I'm so grateful that, like, my friends and my family, like, helped it be, like, a lighthearted thing. And we really did have some laughs over some things that I had no idea had happened. But some of it was really scary. And I remember my brother came and visited me in the rehab centre once. And about a week, it must have been about a week or 2 weeks before this all happened, Aura, the club, we hosted a boat party. And now, like today, I can remember it clear as day. Like, I remember all of it. But at the time, my brother was like, oh yeah, and then at the boat party. And I was like, boat party? Like, I had no recollection. There was so many things I had no recollection. Like, you could have told me anything had happened and I would have had to believe you or not believe you. Like, I had no recollection of so many things. And it was quite tough because I'd have like a few friends would have conversations with me and like, they'd be like, oh, do you remember this? Do you remember that? And I'd be like, oh, yeah. But actually I didn't remember loads of it. So that was quite scary. So that was all of that. And I was on a lot of medication as well. I think at the start, I can't remember the name of the medication I was on. It was an anti-seizure medication. And I was having to take a lot of tablets. I can't remember exactly how many, but I remember there being a lot of tablets, which I would have to take on a daily basis, morning and night. and then gradually I would wean myself off of those. But I was on medication straight for 3 years at the start, and then I came off of it. Like, I weaned myself off, I came off of it, and then fast forward to, and then I was fine. Like I said, I'd made a full recovery. And then in 2017, I think it was either 2017 or 2018, I actually relapsed and had another seizure, which was really scary. It was when I was in Dubai, and I'm not going to spend hours talking about that second time, but basically what had happened was I'd been traveling. So I did an overnight flight to Dubai, so I hadn't really slept. Me and my friend went out and got drunk. So I was drunk, hadn't slept. We got back, went to sleep, and I woke up in the night with a doctor shining a torch in my eyes. And my friend Gemma, bless her, who was with me, was like, "You've had a seizure." So that was really scary because I'd been fine for 3 years, and all of a sudden I just wasn't fine again. And it was really scary. I was obviously in a different country. Luckily, I've got family friends who were close by, who came to the hospital and stuff. Anyway, luckily, it wasn't a case that the encephalitis had come back. But what had happened was, and this is actually quite an important fact, apparently, I think, please don't quote me on these numbers, but it's something like, just like a normal person, so anyone who's not had any experience with seizures before, you have a 3% chance of having a seizure. So just like anyone. If you've had a seizure before, so myself, for example, I then had a 7% chance of having a seizure. So it's still a lower percentage, but it's still double what a normal person's percentage would be, more than double. And anyway, I got back from Dubai and I had a lot of tests done. I had some ECGs done on my brain, and we figured out, and again, going back to Dr. Ali Almamar, who helped me with all of this and just was so helpful for me and my family, he basically figured out that the chances of me having a seizure are so much higher when I'm on lack of sleep. So if I'm sleep deprived, or if I'm dehydrated or intoxicated. So from that point, I remember Dr. Ali saying to me, he was like, "You've got two choices. You can either go back on medication for as long as however long, and basically not worry because the meds will make sure that you don't have a seizure, or you don't go on the meds, but you need to make sure that you sleep well every single night and you're never in that situation again." And, you know, although at that time I had massively calmed down my lifestyle, I was no longer working at the club, by the way. The club had actually closed down. I was transitioning into a new career where I no longer was working in the nightclub, and I actually had my own event management company at this time as well. So that was pretty cool. That all came off the back of what had happened. And although, like I said, I'd massively calmed down, I was still like 26, 27 years old. And I was like, do you know what? I don't want to have to make sure I sleep perfectly every night. Like, nobody can control that. I still want to go out. I still want to have a drink. I was still young. I was, you know, living my life. I just felt more comfortable going back on the medication. So that's what I did. So that was in 2018. And I was actually totally fine after that. And from that point onwards, obviously lockdown was not far away. And when lockdown happened, actually prior to lockdown happening, I had a random thought, and I do it in speech marks because I don't believe anything is ever random. Everything happens for a reason. I'd had a random thought to do a personal training qualification, mainly just to kind of learn more about fitness. I'd always been into fitness. I'd always been a gym goer myself. When I grew up, I was a dancer. Like, I danced all the way up until I was 18. Even at uni, I did dance classes and stuff. So I did my PT qualification. At this point, I was living on my own at this point as well. Had a lovely flat in Putney on my own. And when lockdown happened, obviously my event management business stopped. I also had a concierge company at the time, which revolved around travel and bookings. That went out the window. And I thought, you know what, this is my chance to make a go of this PT thing that I've done. Now's the time. It just felt right. So in lockdown, I started my first online community, which was called the Healthy, Happy, Strong Squad, where I would host on Facebook. I would do Facebook Lives and we'd go on Zoom, and I would host online workouts literally every single morning for free, for my friends initially, just like there was like 10 of us that would do it. And then before I knew it, as the weeks were passing through lockdown, it grew to the point where I had over 1,000 members in my Facebook group. And yeah, I mean, cut a long story short, my PT business just really took off. I was so fortunate of the timing of it. You know, lockdown was a really challenging time for so many people. And it was for people that I know that are very close to me as well. But for me, it really was a life-changing, pivotal moment for me. I started a new career, I went in a new direction, and it led me to where I am now, off the back of everything that had previously happened to me, which I've been talking about in this video. It was in lockdown that I remember doing so much personal development work, which I had actually started about 3 years prior. And it was in lockdown where I was recording a video about mindset, to share on my Instagram or something. I can't even remember what it was for, but I remember recording a video and something clicked in my head, which took me back to being in recovery from encephalitis. And I was like, wow, that was the moment. That was the moment I realized my mind is going to carry me through to my results. And from that point, I knew that teaching mindset work and helping people become the healthiest, happiest, and strongest versions of themselves was something that I was here to do. And that just took off in lockdown. And yeah, fast forward to now, 2026. I've actually taken a back seat in personal training, but I'm a Reformer Pilates instructor. I manage 2 Reformer studios here in Bedford. I do my mindset coaching. I've got my one-to-one clients. I do group programs. I host retreats. I do everything that I can to just help people become the best versions of themselves. And I've obviously got my podcast, Real Talk with Nat, which is based around personal development and mindset. You'll see all the videos here on my YouTube. And I've got my vlogs, which I'm now doing as well. Some are mindset related, some are totally not. But just here to kind of be transparent and show you guys what everything is all about, and what life can look like when you choose to work on yourself and when you choose to do what it takes to come out of something really shit. So this video is way longer than I intended. I do apologise. I was hoping this would be about 20 minutes and it's probably about double that. But I hope it helps somebody. I hope it inspires somebody. And if I can help anyone with anything, please do, you know, whether it's regarding encephalitis recovery or just life in general, please do get in touch. You can find me on Instagram at nat_Naaman, Naaman. Watch my podcast episodes as well. I promise you they will help you too. The guests which I've had on there, I'm on series 4 at the moment. We're in process of recording series 4, as well as having already released an episode as well last week. But the guests on there have all been through some crazy life experiences and have come out the other side. And I just know that if you do watch and listen, you're going to take something away. So thank you so much for watching. Please make sure that you guys follow Encephalitis International on Instagram. I think they're on all the platforms. They're definitely on TikTok as well. Let's raise awareness about this illness, because like I mentioned on my Instagram reel that I posted, you know, so many people have never even heard of it, let alone know what the symptoms are or anything like that. I did talk about this on my reel, but I just want to end this video talking about the Flames campaign, which Encephalitis International are currently launching this year on February 22nd. And the Flames campaign describes 6 key symptoms and signs which you can look out for, which your doctor can look out for, to help you catch encephalitis earlier. So you've got F, which is your flu-like symptoms, L, which is loss of consciousness, A, which is an acute headache, M, which is memory problems, E, which is emotional or behavioural changes, and S, which is seizures. So if you're coming across any of those symptoms, or specifically all at once, that is your sign to just maybe get things checked out. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I hope to see you back on my channel soon.